Hello fellow scale modelers, welcome back to another video with your host Ray. Today I've got the Academy 1/72 scale P-47D Thunderbolts. I'm going to do a review as well as explain a few parts that I feel that any potential buyers should make note of, as well as explain the backstory as to why I even built this plane, because normally I wouldn't build a kit like this. There's a lot to cover, so we'll jump straight into it. First, I'll go over the backstory, so if you don't want to hear the backstory, then skip to the timestamp that is on your screen right now. But if you do, then keep watching. The reason I built this kit all starts when my dad was 8 or 9 years old. And at that age, he started building model airplane kits, much like I did, with his dad. Much like me when I started building airplane kits with my dad. One of the first airplanes he built, or I think it was the first airplane, was a P-47D Thunderbolt in 1/72 scale. You can see it right now. Fast forward many years later, and my grandfather comes to visit, and he brings what's left of that P-47. Now, at the time, I was about 10 years old, so I had no idea what I was doing, and I definitely was not as skilled as I am today to be able to repair it, so I just let it sit in my drawer. Fast forward to January of 2020. My grandfather passes away. One of the only things we have to remember him physically is that P-47. Now, fast forward to today, and my dad asks me if I can build a P-47 that resembles the one that he built with his dad so many years ago. And I originally did want to do this, but at a later date, so I just figured, you know what, I'll do it. And we went to the model store, bought the kit, and here we are. This is what the result of that build process was. And I gotta say, I'm pretty proud of it. I'm glad I was able to do this. It barely resembles the original P-47 my dad and his dad built. Right now on your screen, if you want, you can compare and contrast the two. The only things that really do match is the silver paint job and the checkered pattern here on the flaps, on the little flaps over the engine cover. So yeah, that's that. So, and I'm also pretty surprised with the result, because this is the first time I build a model airplane since May of 2019, and the first time I build a plastic scale model kit of a military vehicle from World War II, or any vehicle at all, since March of 2020, which was way too long. So at first it took me a little bit to get used to it, but after a few minutes I was right in my area where I needed to be, so that's nice. Now we'll start up with the actual review itself. So I'm going to move the model and get the box. Okay, if I could get the box, that would be just nice. Here it is. So here you can see the front of the box. There you go. Sorry about that. Here's the front of the box. It's just a green P-47 with a checkered pattern on its engine cover, which it looks pretty cool. Here's the bottom, here's the right, here's the top, and here is the left. If I went too fast, feel free to pause the video and rewind and see what I went over. Here's the back, because it's just cardboard because it holds the rest of the parts trees, so just want to point that out. This model does not include any sort of cement or paint or anything to help you build it, so you need to buy that separately. Here are the instructions. I'm not going to go over all of them. I'm only going to reference the instructions when I'm explaining a certain building process. And there should be a link online as to where you can actually download the instructions as a PDF so you can read them much clearer. However, I'm not sure about that. If there is, there will be a link in the description to a website where you can download it from. And trust me, this website is trustable. I've downloaded instructions from them myself, so it's pretty safe. I haven't had any issues with them yet. The box art's pretty nice. The instructions are very clear. Now, about the model itself. It's a very nice build, fairly easy. There's a few parts that I would like to point out, so you can watch out for. Not necessarily complaints, because everything went well. So everything went together surprisingly well. Like, I didn't have to do any sanding really, or any sort of modifying to the parts, or extensive modification to the parts so they would fit. So that was pretty cool. I will explain the parts that I would like to point out after I do a in-depth review of the airplane itself. So we'll start up with the front. Here is your propeller, pretty large. It's supposed to spin, but I wasn't able to allow it to spin due to a reason I will explain later. Here you have your engine cover. The little flaps here. The little flaps here are designed, I think they're radiator flaps. They are designed to open and close depending, I'm not sure what it depends on, but they are. They are permanently in the closed position. You cannot have them either open or closed on this model. Once we get to the side here, I just want to point out that all of these little details are mirrored on the right side of the airplane, so there's no differences whatsoever, which is, it's cool, but I think it's a little bit inaccurate. However, I'm not sure about that. Now getting up to the canopy and the cockpit section, you have your cockpit in there. You got a seat, a headrest. You can barely see any of that. I'm so sorry. Yeah, now you can see it. And the little red dot there is the top of the control stick, as well as the control panel, which is somewhere back there. It's colored black. So, yeah. The interior of the cockpit, as well as the canopy, is fairly simple. There's no decals for the gauges and all that good stuff. So, I just want to point that out. If you're touchy about the interiors, then I recommend getting a different kit. Moving on to the back end of the aircraft, you can see here's the antenna as well as the radio wire that I added there. This isn't included in the kit. I just took some spare plastic parts and lit that on fire and pulled it apart, and what resulted was this thin string that I then attached as the radio wire, which is quite cool. Now for the tail itself, nothing too special here, just a few cool decals as well as weathering. Here's the rear landing gear, if you're curious about that. Here's what the back of the model looks like. If you can see that, that'd be nice. That's what it looks like from back here. Here's the top of the model. Looks pretty cool. And here's the bottom. Yep, so that's the bottom. The opposite side, the right side of the model, is pretty much the same. As you can tell, as I was telling you about the mirror part of how all the details mirror to the right side, as they're the same as the left side details. Just want to point that out. The decals on the right side, however, they don't match. You don't get this red square right here, nor do you get this, I guess, panel. I'm not sure what that is. Yeah, you guys can see what I'm pointing at. I'm not sure why, but I guess it's part of the kit. Here's the front of the airplane. You can see the engine in there. It's pretty detailed, but it's also simple, so that's nice. And of course the propeller, which is designed to spin, but I couldn't get it to spin. And those little markings there are also decals. The yellow parts here, the yellow tips, aren't decals. Here's the bottom of the aircraft. You have your landing gear right here. The wheels do not roll. And you cannot position the landing gear in the retracted position. They are designed to be fixed in the extended position. So if you do want to have your landing gear on your model in the retracted position up in the wings and in the fuselage, then get a different kit, or you can try doing it on this kit, but it's very hard to do, so I wouldn't recommend doing it. You have your fuel tank here. This is the smaller of the two types that you receive. Here is the other type of fuel tank you receive. It's a little bit longer and just more cylindrical, if you will. Well, this one is more streamlined. I'm not sure about the production years or the purpose of the uses of each of those, so don't ask me too much on that. And of course, you have two 250-pound bombs or 115-kilogram bombs for those of you living around the world. Sorry, not around the world, but outside of the United States. As for the rest of your ordnance options, you're pretty limited as to what you can do. You obviously get the bombs and the fuel tanks, but you also do get 2 types of rocket launchers. Well, not 2 types, but you get 2 rocket launchers that you can also add, and if you don't mind rolling, 2 rockets that you can add, which are elongated tubes, if you will, and they go to the side of the bombs. And to mount those, you have to drill extra holes in the wing, so make sure you do that when you're ready to do that. And yeah, if you're looking for more payload options or a different set, then you're going to have to buy some or get a different kit. So that's that. Other than the few things that I did mention that are kind of iffy and the lack of customization, it's a pretty good kit. I recommend this to an intermediate scale modeler. If this is your first time building a scale model airplane, then I'm not sure I'd recommend it. There's still a few tough elements here and there, and there's a few things I do want to point out that definitely should be on your watch list, which I will do momentarily. But yeah, if you're skilled, then you should be fine. But if this is one of your first airplanes, or if this is your first airplane, you're going to have a tough time building it. So make sure you know what you're doing. Now let's move on to the stuff that I'd like to point out. First, we'll start with the propeller. Now, the way that the propeller is mounted, as I will show you, it is mounted via a shaft, part C13, that goes behind the engine, which is behind part D10 and behind part D9. So, once you finish the engine assembly, sorry about that, you're supposed to attach the engine and the shaft to the fuselage itself. This is where things get a little ugly. That shaft has no way of being secured in any sort of length here. You have to hold it manually. What I mean by that is, if you push it back far enough, it will get stuck in between the engine and the fuselage, and you won't be able to pull it out, and therefore you'll have to have your propeller stuck in a fixed position. Now, you may ask, is there a solution to this? Yes, there is. Instead of putting part C13 behind part D10 and D9, put it in between part D9 and D10. So put part C13 inside of the hole here in D9, and then put D10 on part D9 afterwards. You'll get a very extended space as well as no risk of losing the shaft, but you'll also have to cut it so the propeller fits at the right, what is it, length or distance away from the fuselage itself. So make sure you test fit it when you do that, so you get the right length, and don't cut it too crazily either. Next complaint I have is the engine cowling, or the engine cover here. One, you cannot position these radiator flaps, or whatever they're called, in the open position. They're permanently closed, and I don't recommend cutting them because it would be really hard to position them to where they're open. So just buy another kit if you want them open, or just deal with it if you can't find another one. Now, the whole engine cover itself, it's one piece, and it goes onto the front of the fuselage. The fit is quite annoying. There's no exact fit. It's very loose. It fits very loosely. There's a lot of room to shake it around and mess up the alignment. So this is where I recommend using slow setting glue if you have the patience. If you have quick setting glue, then you better act quick to make sure it's aligned before the glue actually sets. Other than those few things, then I think you should be basically covered for the rest of the build. It's fairly simple and easy. There's a few small parts that you will work with, so I highly recommend using precision tweezers, although it's not necessary. Just using precision tweezers will make your job a lot easier. Last part of this review, it's okay, we're almost done. I know I'm taking a while. Last part of the review is the decals. Now, the decals on this model are different from any other model that I've worked with. They go on nicely, but once they go on, they do not stay. If you touch them for any reason, they will move like it's a slip and slide. So make sure you give adequate time for them to dry. I'd say at least 2 or 3 hours per decal, no matter the size, because it's gonna take a while for them to dry and stay put. And even if they don't stay dry and they fall off, then just use like scenic cement, like spray cement, and then put the decal back on, and then it should stay where it's at. One thing I'd also like to point out with the decals is that you do get the option to put a checkered pattern here on the engine cover. Make sure you cut that decal up, because I tried putting it there and it's physically impossible to put the decal onto the engine cover here. So yeah, I tried to do that, but it failed, so I ended up just scrapping it and putting this checkered pattern up here. So yeah, make sure you cut it in a way you can actually apply it in sections. And same goes for this tail decal here, this stripe. It can easily break and it's very hard to put on, so I suggest dividing it in the spot where the tail is here, well, the tail curves, so then you could put one on one side and put the other on the other side, so it makes your job a lot easier. Other than that, the decals are pretty easy to put on. There's a few small ones that are going to be a little harder to do, but they're pretty manageable. You get 2 paint schemes that you can do with this kit, and I wish I had a picture of the decal sheet so I can show you what the decals look like, but I don't. So yeah, you get 2 paint schemes, one like the one on the box, and another one which I'm not exactly sure if anyone has actually even done. So yeah. So that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching all the way till the end. I know I took a while, and if there's anything I can improve upon, please feel free to comment down below. Make sure it's constructive criticism, not anything too insulting, because I still will take constructive criticism to improve on the channel. But that's it. Like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to ask below, and I'll answer to the best of my ability. Yeah, and I'll see you guys in my next video. See you later.